Wow, is this how you do it? This is cool, man. And I said, well, wait a minute, I'm going too.
I was a filmie. I was there to make movies.
You got to get down in the trenches. You got to have that guerrilla spirit.
Everything was very fun because that made us creative.
American Cinema Group is the story of an independent film company which changed motion picture history.
There were several films in some state of post-production when I joined American Cinema. Late Great Planet Earth, it was a documentary film that needed some additional editing, additional footage shot. And another one was a film called Dirt, which was a film that was designed to be to off-road racing what Endless Summer was to surfing.
I had been working for the Peterson Company. Al Belkin had been head of production at the Peterson Company. He had arranged financing through American Cinema to do a feature at the Peterson Company with Perry King and Meg Foster. When it became apparent that he was about to make the move and go from Peterson Company to American Cinema, I took a look and thought, time to go to features, and went downstairs and said, if you're leaving, I'd like to come with you. And that's how we both ended up at American Cinema.
The distribution company started very small. As I said, Mike Leone announced to me one day that we had started a distribution company and I was the head of it, and the first two people I hired at the same time were David Miller to be in charge of booking the theaters and handling that whole side of it, and Sandy Shaw to handle the advertising, promotion and publicity, and they were just great to work with and fun, and they got out there and stimulated the marketplace, and everybody wanted to work with them, and it just took off.
Well, I was associated with the company, a marketing and distribution firm that Michael Leone was utilizing at the time, and he had decided that not only did he not want to rely on an outside group to market and distribute his films, but also wanted to build an organization.
They were looking for someone to be in charge of advertising, promotion, publicity for this startup distribution company. And so I said, well, what the heck, I'll go interview. So I interviewed with David Miller, and I was hired. When I was hired, he basically told me that there was one film we were going to start with, and that I should know up front that if the film didn't work out, that we would all be out of a job.
All of a sudden, a guy walks into my office and hands me a check for $10,000 to just give him some ideas on putting a film together, and I found out that there's these new tax shelter films. And nobody really seemed to be concerned whether they got the money back or not.
American Cinema started out as a financing entity. It would finance people to make the pictures.
American Cinema was located in Torrance.
In a bank building because it was a tax shelter company.
Mike Leone, who ran the company, liked it because it was close to the airport. Investors would fly in from all over the country. It was convenient to the airport. It was close to restaurants, shopping, hotels. From a financial standpoint, it made a lot of sense.
How American Cinema operated was really, really interesting. The most interesting was how the money was raised. The money was raised between Christmas and New Year's in a private jet, flying around the country with the tax shelter deal, literally leaving on Christmas Day and coming back probably the day after New Year's, getting everybody's last minute check for $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, flying into tiny little airports in Mississippi or, outside of New England someplace, and coming up with people that had serious tax problems who needed these multiple write-offs. That was really a fun thing, and that lasted like 4 or 5 years. That you didn't do anything between Christmas and New Year's other than do the Dog and Pony Show in the private jet. And there's a whole lot of stories about the private jet, but we won't go into that right now. Mike Leone, who again was head of American Cinema, based in Torrance,
Had a home in Rancho Santa Fe.
and had a nice lifestyle down there. Mike had a way of making announcements, and he announced to me one day, he said that he was moving the
American Financial Resources, which was the financial arm of the company that raised the money, was moving that to Del Mar.
He wanted the company to be located down there.
It was convenient for him to have it in Del Mar because it was very close to his home, Rancho Santa Fe.
And I said, well, wait a minute, I'm going too, you know.
So they moved us from Torrance down to the little town of Del Mar,
We moved, everybody and everything down there.
and he felt that we could easily access Hollywood by train or driving up.
The production end couldn't function out of there. So we ended up with 2 facilities.
It was a wonderful place to work, except we spent most of our time on the trains or in cars going back up to Los Angeles and Hollywood to work.
There was a small group of production and distribution companies that were very small independents that were doing niche films and were marketing them in a very unique way. And the niche films were generally either something like Endless Summer that was for the surfing crowd, or things like In Search of Noah's Ark that were more for the religious crowd. And so what they did is they would go city by city and do what became known as four-walling.
And the term four-wall came from the fact that we would rent the 4 walls of the theater and everything in it. And we would rent a theater for $500 and $600 a week.
And the way they made that work is by doing saturation TV advertising, but at the local level.
They would totally roadblock all the TV channels for a couple of weeks, pitching a movie that maybe cost $300,000 or $400,000. They'd spend $6 or $7 million promoting a movie.
And the theater owner kept the concessions, and the rent for the four-walling, but the distributor kept all the box office receipts.
We would have sellout after sellout after sellout on movies that had nobody in it. It wasn't based on a great book. Nobody knew anything about it, but we would just say it was a good movie, and pretty soon people would forget where they heard that it was a good movie. And we would take in the box office, $14,000, $15,000 per theater. And that was wonderful. It was cash. We got the cash every night. The hardest part about it was having enough trusted people to go around and pick up the cash every night, because you might open in Los Angeles in 80 or 90 theaters. We lost a few guys, so I don't know. They're still gone. Still looking for them. And it literally would be in a hotel room in Oklahoma City with $40,000, $50,000 in cash on the bed. We'd go back, take the cash right out of theaters every night, and throwing the money up in the air. It was lots of fun.
What American Cinema did is said, why can't that work for mainstream films? How come the major studios aren't doing that? Well, the reason is the major studios didn't want to go city by city by city. So American Cinema took that philosophy and applied it to mainstream films.
I think we completely revitalized and revamped how pictures were marketed.
Al Belkin was the president, and he let us do whatever we wanted. He was very laissez-faire. He was involved with what we did, but he never interfered. If we thought it was a good idea and it sounded, really good, he said, well, sure, why not? Let's try it.
We were all totally young. None of us knew exactly what we were doing. We were just trying it all out.
She kind of guided me through because I was so new to the business, and Jean had experience.
Sandy and I sat down at one point after realizing, okay,
We became really good friends.
we have to figure out how to market this picture.
Thank God she adopted me.
I will never forget, we sat down in a conference room one day.
We did sit in a room and decide how could we get all the work done that we had to get done.
She looks at me and I look at her and she says, have you ever done this? And I said, no. I said, have you? She said, no. So we figured out we better figure out how to do it.
We all kind of sat around and said, what should we do?
So she sits there, she says, well, I'm from New Jersey, so I'll take east of the Mississippi. I went, great, I'm born in Santa Monica, I'll take west of the Mississippi.
There were no egos involved either, because we were trying to make a success of something.
So we literally split up the country.
It was a very fun, tiring, exciting time.
All the pictures at a certain point had various domestic distribution deals, which were a requirement for the financial investment setup under which they were produced, except for one, and that one picture was a picture called Good Guys Wear Black.
The first picture that we designed the marketing and took out into the marketplace was Good Guys Wear Black.
starring a completely unknown person by the name of Chuck Norris.
We had a very short period of time to be successful.
You have to have the cowboy spirit.
We had to do it in a very clever way because the star was Chuck Norris.
You gotta get down in the trenches. You gotta have that guerrilla spirit.
He's a 6-time undefeated world karate champion at the time, but nobody knew him in the or outside of his little martial arts world. Nobody knew him.
You gotta go out and fight and fight. You gotta be different. You gotta be a little quicker on your feet.
We ran a lot of late TV spots. We just ran them every 10 minutes, every half hour. There was another TV spot. We really blitzed it. At that time, you could buy cheap late-night TV.
We would absolutely roadblock the television channels on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, Saturday night to drive them into the theaters.
I was like experimenting with stuff, and I knew that what I had to do was just drill people over the head. I knew that what they were going to do with these things was saturate. And there were all kinds of 10-second spots and things like that. And so I was saying, I had lines like, "He once was their spy. Now it's kill or die." Incredible action.
Once he was their spy. Now it's kill or die. Good guys wear black.
Gene and David, we would all strategize. And what we decided to do was to go after his martial arts audience because they knew him and they were avid.
And they would get the word out and drag people along. This, like you're talking about, this is the deal. This is what I do. This is why I love the sport. Chuck Norris is, is my hero.
So then we realized we needed to take Chuck on tour.
I was the one who had to set up all the tours.
We would get on the phone and say, "Hi, I've got this great actor, 6-time world karate champion, Chuck Norris."
And I'd get Chuck Morris.
No, not Morris, Norris. And he really needs to be on your AMLA show.
Chuck Norris was amazing. He would do anything.
We dragged poor Chuck all over the country.
Chuck became quite a celebrity.
The audiences loved him. He was a real guy. He wasn't a movie actor.
Good Guys Wear Black was a huge success.
Our pictures looked not only as good as any other major motion picture out there, but they were supported with television ads, with radio support, with promotions in the marketplace, and that's really where we differed. And very quickly, the theatrical circuits, whether it be United Artists or General Cinema, American Multi-Cinema, came to recognize that if we were booking a picture in their theaters in a particular town, that they knew that we would spend every possible effort in terms of letting people know that these pictures were out there through a combination of effort and also spending money on television campaigns.
We would do major promotions in front of the theaters. We'd get on the news. We'd guarantee the theaters that we would spend X thousands of dollars on TV advertising, and it worked.
Which was really a milestone. Not only did it put the company on the map, made people sit up and say, "Who are those guys?"
We did one of the first, if not the first, sort of full-page color fold-out that went into Variety. Might have also been the Hollywood Reporter, I don't recall, but definitely in Variety.
What we wanted to do was talk about American cinema's success, that we had been successful and that we were a company that meant business.
It was geared for the investor, so it became not only advertising, but handouts, sort of product promotion, informational.
So that caused quite a stir. I didn't know it would. It just seemed like a good way to, let people know we were in town, and it did.
As you can see, we knew what we were about at the time, and but this is very common now, but at the time, it was completely revolutionary. Hadn't been done before. This was something that belonged to another industry, but not the film industry.
We got a lot of accolades for it, and a lot of the brochure actually won quite a few awards.
And then the natural evolution happened again. The good thing gets killed off because it's too good. The studios looked at that, said, "Wait a minute, we have a lot more money, and instead of going city by city, we'll buy network television, and we'll start to release, hundreds of theaters at a time." And gradually they started to make thousands of prints at a time, and the theater owners had to build more screens just to accommodate this, because the ad budgets in the TV were just huge. And of course, then the studios had to put more money into production and pay the stars more, and everything just escalated. So what we started and what worked for us eventually became another animal.
I think that's what American cinema really was about, was a complete change to the cinema marketing.
Michael determined that it was very, very difficult, and Al Belkin, who I also worked with, that was just too difficult.
We eventually found out in a short period of time that if you're going to be in the movie business, you can't be in Rancho Ware.
We were growing so big, and we were so successful that we really needed to go to Hollywood and have our offices there. The offices we moved into were right across from Grauman's Chinese Theater, and we had 2 or 3 or 4 floors in that building. It was a big old building.
Jean Higgins was the executive in charge of production, and she had a real flair for organizing the motion pictures and stabilizing them, keeping everything moving in the same direction, and was a powerful influence in the smooth running operation of American cinema when it was really turning out pictures of good quality.
When I went to American Cinema with Al Belkin, there were roughly 5 pictures that had been completed, some of which had foreign sales deals that had been negotiated by Norman Katz, none of which had an American or domestic distribution deal. Once these pictures were essentially placed, dealt with, the last being Good Guys Wear Black, which we chose to 4-wall, which led American Cinema into creating a distribution company. So they now had the front end, which was the financing, the back end, which was the distribution. All that really logically remained was to fill in the middle, which was to create production and produce your own films. When we were first starting up, we had no facilities. As at American Cinema, we were basically in an office building. And as we needed goods and services, we needed to fulfill distribution contracts. Peterson Company was the logical place.
Chris Peterson was always a good friend of mine, and he was anxious to have that kind of energy in his studios anyway.
So we used their people, their facilities.
We worked with Peterson Company editors like Lynn McCallan. We had to shoot segments. We worked with Peterson Company production crews. We needed projection facilities. We used those.
And it was a nice symbiotic relationship. Among the first pictures that we produced were literally the second Chuck Norris picture, which was A Force of One.
A force of one. He hears the silence. He sees the darkness. He's the only one who can stop the killing. Jennifer O'Neill, Chuck Norris, in A Force of One.
At the time, we were setting up the production company. We were setting up the buildings. We were setting up all the accounts for it. We were literally starting a company and producing a picture at the same time. Actually, it was the old Todd A.O. building at the corner of Seward and Romaine. It was great fun. I had the corner office, which at one point had belonged to Michael Todd. It was a very old Art Deco building with a round corner, and I used to go in every morning and knock on the wood and ask for a little help. By the time we started the Octagon, American Cinema Productions had their office, had everything set up. That was really the first picture out with American Cinema Productions as a going concern.
It grew very, very rapidly and became a very powerful force in the movie business for a relatively short period of time.
We delivered. The pictures made money. There was no getting around it.
Those movies made lots and lots and lots of money, millions and millions and millions of dollars, and it was just, they were in the right time and the right place.
I was a filmie. I was there to make movies. And we didn't realize that we were supposed to not make money.
Nobody really seemed to be concerned whether they got the money back or not.
We were there to make good pictures, and our pictures made a lot of money.
You know, talk about a dream. That was wonderful.
We had built a lot of momentum. It was a lot easier. I could actually hire people to do the campaigns for us, to cut the TV spots for us, to do the trailers, the previews, the coming attractions for us. I had lots of people bringing in design work to us. It was a whole different thing.
We made one of the original deals with HBO to sell movies.
American cinema in its initial formulative stages had a number of things working for it. One was it had pictures that were timely, it had pictures that were well produced, and the individuals, and say specifically in the case of the Chuck Norris pictures, had major talent that was willing to go out on the road.
There were a number of very, very successful distribution pickups. Fade to Black, great horror film. Scream, terrific horror film.
It was a combination of timing, support, and a cowboy mentality.
It was a constant moneymaker.
It was fairly overwhelming and very exciting.
It was American cinema's desire to go mainstream that I think actually led to its demise.
You may have 1 or 2 or 3 wildly successful pictures. You can't get carried away with yourself. You can't let your ego start influencing your decisions, and you see that over and over and over again.
It could have stayed as a niche company with very limited upside, or it could have gone to a bigger company with bigger pictures, with a bigger upside. And the owners of the company felt that was the only logical conclusion and structured the finances and so forth to do that.
It was a very evolving business at that time with the titles. The budget's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, going from $200,000 or $300,000 now to $10 million. It wasn't the same business anymore, and the economics for that business just it didn't fit the model anymore.
We had a board of directors all of a sudden. We had to get our budgets approved. I was demoted to head of, I was vice president of publicity and promotion. Another girl was brought in to head up advertising. There was one of the, Dick Lederer, who was a very famous marketing guy for the major studios, was brought in to head up ad pub promo. He was fantastic, but he was still very structured in how you did motion pictures because he came from the studios.
The neat thing about being an independent is the spontaneity and the ability to create things out of nothing and minimal budget and be inventive as you market and try things. You don't have far to fall, really.
Everything had to be approved by about 8 other people. And all of a sudden, everything got handled by a lot of people. It was very corporate. I call it corporate leg lifting, excuse me. But that was the phrase because everybody had to have their input. So if I brought in an idea, people wouldn't just leave it alone. Everybody had to have input, and so it all got changed. So by the time it came out, it wasn't what it was originally supposed to be.
We had been doing very, very well with Chuck Norris and his karate pictures, what we would term today as slasher movies, but fun movies. I mean, Friday the 13th certainly arose out of what we had done. I think we had a picture called Scream that was a distribution pickup. We did not produce it, but at that point, we were not only making and distributing our own pictures, but we were actively soliciting and buying other independents' pictures to distribute. And then we would do the campaigns, the marketing, the ads, roll them out. They decided they wanted to start doing larger, more mainstream pictures.
We looked for higher visibility productions, and there was a best-selling book to buy, and we were able to get the rights to that and set Lewis Gilbert to direct it. He had just come off one of the big James Bond movies. I knew Frank De Felitta, and he just had a big selling book called The Entity, and I bought the rights to that and put that in place.
The first picture that actually became produced under that sort of regime, if you will, was a picture called Charlie Chan and the Curse of the Dragon Queen. The cast was huge. The cast was actually a very nice cast, but it's what I would say was a cast that was designed for foreign distribution.
Peter Ustinov versus Angie Dickinson in Charlie Chan and the Curse of the Dragon Queen.
Well, when the studios came into American cinema and started taking over the big pictures, especially Charlie Chan and Tough Enough and Eye of the Jury and a whole bunch of other ones that I don't remember, they just put those into the normal studio system, and they would either live or die based on what the studio did. And the studio had learned a lot from the four-wallers and from the saturation market people like we were. They had kind of taken over a lot of the ideas that we had, and they were attempting to do it. But they hadn't really perfected it at that time. And those films, I think some of them did okay, and some of them were total disasters.
And so here comes the higher visibility, higher budget product, and started to take the company to a different direction that it had to go to support that. It had, therefore, had to have bigger marketing budgets. It had to have more staff.
And that's when the company really kind of imploded. I mean, it became this big, huge machine.
When the majors came in, there would be some 16-year-old marketing genius at whatever the studio was, and they knew exactly what to do with it. And God, I was in my late 20s, so I was an old-timer, you know, so I can't believe they didn't listen to me.
We were all kind of put into our individual areas, and then all the fun got taken out of it, and then the film started to fail, and then we started losing money, and the bottom just fell out of the whole thing.
The very techniques that American cinema pioneered by that time had been adopted by the major studios, who were able to open 1,200 prints at a time instead of 20 prints at a time, and the competition for theaters before the big boom of building a lot more screens became intense, very intense. And so American cinema moved itself, in trying to grow and trying to do the logical thing, moved itself into direct competition with studios who decided to out-clout it. And the result was the result.
We started with 5 of us. We grew to 250, and then we just totally collapsed down to 4 or 5 of us again.
Its success was its failure. And, you know, I think that's probably happened to most of the independents. They either had no success and failed, or they had great success and failed, or they had great success and were acquired, like Miramax and like New Line. Were acquired by majors, so they also then became a major studio or an arm of a major studio.
It was a very interesting lesson to learn about how to get too big too fast. And you learn a lot what to do and a lot of what not to do. And the most important lesson I ever learned was to never stifle anybody's creativity.
From the very first day of going out for the money to having giant openings in Broadway and Westwood and all the major cities, to selling the film foreign at the various film markets and everything. It was a show. It was an amazing show. It was lots of fun to be there.